HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Mysterious Bookshop presents the best mystery stories of the year 2022. Edited by Sara Paretsky and Otto Penzler. Introduction by Sara Paretsky. Read by Daniel Thomas May and Rachel Perry. Foreword. If you stick around long enough, things accumulate. I'm not a writer, but I have somehow amassed more than 70 books to my credit, mainly as an anthology editor. I do not include the 12 children's books I wrote under pseudonyms. Although real writers wrote the overwhelming percentage of the material contained in those anthologies, I nonetheless have a proprietary pride in them, however minimally I deserve to take credit. I refer to them as my books, and the contributors as my authors. The Mysterious Bookshop presents the best mystery stories of the year, which made its debut in the autumn of 2021, is largely a continuation of a series of which I was the editor for 20 years, and the same criteria for selecting stories apply to the current iteration as they always have. As a reader, you know what makes stories good enough to stand out from their peers: narrative drive, characterization, clarity of vision and execution, literary style. If authors make me believe that the people who populate their stories are genuine, force me to wonder what they will do and what will happen to them, and have those events be compelling and say it all in a way that I haven't heard it said before, they have me in the palm of their hands. While the great age for fiction magazines has passed, a lot of mystery stories continue to be written. The first reader for Best Mysteries, my friend and colleague Michelle Slung, the fastest and smartest reader in the world, and I never engage in hyperbole except when I talk about Mickey Mantle or Tom Brady, looks at and reads about 3,000 stories a year. They can be found in consumer magazines such as Harper's, The New Yorker, and Playboy, mystery magazines such as Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, and The Strand, short story collections, all written by the same author, and anthologies written by various authors, electronic magazines, e-zines such as Thuglit, Tough, and Shotgun Honey, though they often disappear after a short time, and literary journals such as Plowshares, the Kenyon Review, and Texas Quarterly. After Michelle culls the non-mysteries and the stories that clearly have no chance of being named among the best, I read the several hundred remaining tales, trim that list to fewer than 50, and the guest editor makes the final selection, leaving the 20 that we regard as the best of the year to be memorialized between the covers of Best Mysteries. Like every best list, this really means the stories we liked the most. To be selected for the volume is clearly an honor, and one of the best parts of my job is hearing from authors who are thrilled to have their stories recognized and appreciated. A tiny handful of writers have declined to appear in the book. More than a decade ago, T. Karagison Boyle turned me down, saying that he wasn't a mystery writer and didn't want to be identified as one. A couple years later, I had dinner with him and a few other authors, and I berated him for his decision, and he swore he'd be happy to accept if I ever picked one of his stories again. I never have, not out of petulance, but, sadly, he's never written another mystery. At this point, I should say that I define mystery very liberally as any work of fiction in which a crime or the threat of a crime is central to the theme or the plot. This allows me to embrace detective stories, which is the first kind of mystery that comes to mind for many people, thrillers, crime fiction, and suspense. Following this guideline, Sara Paretsky, the guest editor for this year's volume, and I made the final selections for the book, with an honor roll of 10 stories that also were distinguished and carefully considered. It would be impossible to adequately thank Sara Paretsky for her work on this volume, of which we both are proud. As most mystery readers know, she is one of the most significant figures in the history of American crime fiction. With her series character V.I. Warshawski introduced in 1982's Indemnity Only, the hard-boiled female private detective became a popular protagonist in detective fiction, spawning countless imitators. Raised in Kansas, she received a degree in political science at the University of Kansas before moving to Chicago in 1968 and went on to earn a Ph.D. in history at the University of Chicago, followed by an MBA from the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business. Warshawski, who appeared in more than 20 books, is a tough private investigator who isn't afraid to get into a physical fight and usually wins, but is also a woman who pays attention to the way she dresses and sings opera along with the radio. Thanks also are extended to Lee Child, who was kind enough to be the guest editor of the first edition of this series. While I engage in a relentless quest to locate and read every mystery/crime/suspense story published, I live in terror that I will miss a worthy one. So if you are an author, editor, or publisher, or care about one, please feel free to send a book, magazine, or tear sheet to me, care of the Mysterious Bookshop, 58 Warren Street, New York, New York, 10007. If the story first appeared electronically, you must submit a hard copy. It is vital to include the author's contact information. No unpublished material will be considered for what should be obvious reasons. No stories will be returned. If you distrust the Postal Service, enclose a self-addressed stamped postcard and I'll confirm receipt. To be eligible for next year's edition of the Best Mystery Stories of the Year, a story must have been published in the English language for the first time in the 2022 calendar year. I am being neither arrogant nor whimsical when I state that the absolute firm deadline for me to receive a submission is December 31st, due to the very tight production schedule for the book. Sending submissions early is better than sending them later. If the story arrives one day past the deadline, it will not be read. Sorry. Otto Penzler, February 2022.
Introduction. There are 8 million stories in the Naked City, says Mario Ricchetti, one of the assistant DAs in Carolyn Wheat's Dead Man's Thoughts. The protagonist thought differently. I disagreed. There are 8 million clients. I corrected him. There are 3 stories. The lawyers agree and come up with 2. I found it in the street, and he's lying. The assistant DAs are called away by their boss before we learn what the 3rd story was. I've always guessed it was that other person. Several years ago, my dinner partner at a garden party was a psychoanalyst. As we reached the dessert course, he excused himself, stepped away, then came back, leaned over, and said in a low voice, "You are a sociopath. You need help." At the end of the evening, he sought me out and apologized for his comment. "You didn't tell me you wrote mysteries," as if it were my fault that he mistook my witty badinage for the revelations of a criminal. I gave what I hoped was a Mona Lisa smile and said, "They always tell you to write what you know." I was afraid he might give me a bill, since he had offered a professional diagnosis, but he merely scuttled off to the safety of his spouse. Write what you know. This has always seemed strange advice. Some crime writers know poisons, guns, rifles, machetes, knives, hacking, fraud, accelerants, telekinesis, forgery. But most of us rely on research and imagination. What good writers know are emotions. Everyone has felt fear. Everyone experiences narcissistic wounds and fantasizes about revenge. Most of us have been in love, and some of us have felt rejected by the object of our devotion. Perhaps the willingness to follow those emotions into the tortured minds of characters like Carrie or Buffalo Bill could be a sign of sociopathy to an analyst. For the writer, it could be a way of cauterizing a psychic wound. Long before I was a published writer, I turned one of my own rejecting objects into a desiccated old man in a trench coat, who stood on the Michigan Avenue Bridge over the Chicago River, trying to stick his hands up the skirts of passing young women. He was truly disgusting. I think he didn't even bathe. And in the middle of the night, when my insides were twisting with longing and rage, I'd reread the story. So there, Fred Barnacle, I'd think. This is how you're going to end up. Cass Jameson, Wheat's protagonist, is partly right. There aren't a lot of different stories. But there are 7+ billion imaginations, which keep rethinking those stories and coming up with new ways of telling them. Fashions in stories change, as do subjects and language. We all admire Conan Doyle and Anna Katharine Green, but contemporary writers would lose their readers if we used language as ornate as theirs. Poe, who knew horror and madness in the depths of his soul, wrote short stories whose imagery remains with us 180 years later. Montresor's wounded narcissism in The Cask of Amontillado makes him a more chilling monster than Hannibal Lecter. I'm sure with the passage of time we will have many stories built around COVID, but I challenge any writer to surpass The Mask of the Red Death. At the same time, the African Americans in Poe's stories, whether enslaved or free, speak and act in a way that is unbearable. Their speech is always in a crude dialect, meant to show a limited intelligence. Characters like Jupiter in The Gold Bug always put the needs of a white person ahead of their own. While it's painful to read stories like this or Dorothy L. Sayers' casual anti-Semitism, we also get something more than an entertainment from them. Popular fiction opens a window onto the culture of the epoch in which the stories were written. The stories in this collection include a range of voices that we wouldn't have found 20 years ago, let alone at the dawn of the short story. They'll tell readers of the future what was on our collective minds in 2022. These stories include writers experimenting with narratives outside their own life experience, and those are a welcome addition. If we can't imagine places we've never been, lives we've never lived, then we'll be stuck in that worst of all literary genres, the novel of political or religious dogma. I don't know how many trees were cut down to produce Spring in the Victory Collective Farm by Stalin's favorite writer, Gribachev, or the saccharine novels put out by the Religious Tract Society. But these instructive works never found many readers even in their target markets. In this collection, you may find words that engage you or enrage you, but they won't bore you. Our main hope in putting this collection together is to entertain you, perhaps show you worlds you yourself hadn't imagined, or bring you the comfort of a world that you long to inhabit. Sara Paretsky, Chicago, February 2022.
Doug Allen has twice been an Edgar Allan Poe Award winner and the record holder in the Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine Readers Award competition. Doug Allen is one of the best short story writers of his generation and probably of all time. He is also a novelist with a number of critically acclaimed books in print. Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine. The author of 12 novels and more than 140 short stories, Allen has been published internationally in English, German, French, and Japanese. His most recent novel, Murder in Paradise with James Patterson, was on the New York Times bestsellers list for several weeks. More than 24 of his tales have been optioned for development as feature films and television. Allen studied creative writing and criminal psychology at the University of Michigan while moonlighting as a guitarist in the rock group Devil's Triangle and reviewing books for the Flint Journal. His background includes Chinese language studies at Indiana University and extended duty with U.S. Air Force intelligence in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. Career highlights: sipping champagne with Mickey Spillane and waltzing with Mary Higgins Clark. Kiss of Life. Doug Allen. What could be sweeter than a day at the beach? Lounging with my ladylove on a king-size terry towel in the Veiled Dunes, mid-July, mid-80s, midsummer breeze riffling the whitecaps on Lake Michigan. And just when I thought the day couldn't get any better,
"Maybe I should go topless,"
Marcy said. Which captured my attention for a split second, but then reality set in. We've been dating a year, and Marcy is a walking contradiction. A CPA who got through college on a gymnastics scholarship, cute as a bug, tough as a combat boot with wiry swimmer's muscles on a squared-off frame. A tight cap of brown curls and gray eyes that constantly glitter with mischief. Which meant, damn, her offer was too good to be true. "I'd second the motion," I offered. "But this isn't a nude beach, babe. You'd get busted, pun intended, and hauled off to jail. As your lawyer, I'd happily bail you out, but where's this coming from?"
100 young, hot bodies are scampering around the beach, practically starkers, and you're paying no attention to any of them or to me. You keep staring off down the shore.
Guilty, I admitted. There's a woman down there, maybe 150 yards, a tall brunette, just beyond the park on one of the private beaches.
The one wading out into the surf in the see-through bikini?
That's her, I said. She's been sitting on a sand dune in street clothes for some time, staring out over the water, and something seems off about her.
Off how?
I don't know. It's a beautiful day, but she seems to be under her own personal dark cloud. She was staring out at nothing for a long time, then suddenly stood up and started shucking her duds, down to what she's wearing now. Then she waded out into the surf.
It's called swimming, Ray.
A kid screamed, snapping our attention back to our beach. A kid 4 or 5 years old was being dunked by his older sister.
"Hey, you little twerp!"
Marcy yelled at the girl, shaking her finger at them.
"Knock it off!"
And when I glanced back down the shore, the dark-haired woman was gone. Underwater, I guessed. Had to be. She was too far out to have made it back to shore, so I watched, idly waiting for her to surface. Only she didn't freaking surface. And she'd already been underwater for too long, and... Holy crap. "Call 911, I yelled at Marcy. I was already up and sprinting down the beach, trying to keep my eyes fixed on the area where the woman vanished. And as I ran, the detail that bothered me in the first place suddenly registered. Her suit definitely wasn't one. I grew up in Valhalla, on Michigan's North Shore, and spent every summer day of my childhood on this beach. I've seen a million suits, from grandma prim to teeny bopper outrageous, but her bra and bottom looked odd because they weren't a suit at all. She'd stripped to her lingerie and... Damn it! The window for her air supply was already closing fast when I veered out across the shallows, splashing through the surf, driving hard for the area where I'd last seen her. There. For just a moment, I glimpsed a pale, white disturbance between two swells. A body? Maybe. It had to be. Her time was almost up when I began my sprint, and she hadn't surfaced since. If the shape wasn't her... Plunging into the surf, I knifed through the waves, swimming as hard as I could toward the ghostly outline, and slammed into her body, head first. I was stroking so fiercely I slid clear across her form, pushing her under. Not that it mattered. She was drifting with the waves, already beginning to sink, which meant she'd inhaled water and could be dead already. I didn't see any air bubbles around her nose or her mouth. Her eyes were open and unresponsive. Damn it! Squirming around behind her, I hooked my left arm under hers, lifting her head above the surface, just in time to catch a breaker full in the face. I shook it off, but the woman didn't react at all. She was inert, dead weight now. Shifting her body around to get my left arm under her torso, I started kicking hard for the beach, hauling her with me, fighting to keep her face above water. I risked a quick glance shoreward. Marcy was on her cell giving directions to an ambulance. Then she tossed her phone aside and raced into the surf, coming out to help. She met us at a sandbar where the lake was only chest deep, and together we hauled the woman to the shore, lifeless as a sack of cement. Easing her face down on the sand, I tilted her jaw to open her airway, then compressed her lungs, once, twice. Some water burbled out of the corner of her mouth, but Marcy was holding a finger against her carotid to check for a pulse. She shook her head. No heartbeat. We rolled her over and I started CPR as best I remembered it, pumping her chest for 12 strokes, then blowing air into her mouth to inflate her lungs. Her lips felt ice cold, with no more life than a bronze statue. I could taste second-hand booze. Her lungs deflated, technically exhaling, but I felt no other response. Not a gasp or even a shiver. Dead as a headstone. Damn it. I ran through another compression series, then pressed my mouth on hers again, huffing away, forcing air into... She bucked beneath me, lurching upward so violently our foreheads banged together in a head-on collision. I actually saw stars. She snapped bolt upright, her slim frame jerking like she'd been zapped with a cattle prod. Then she spewed, spraying my face and chest with lake water, snot, and everything she'd eaten for a week, a phlegmy mess streaked with bloody foam from her lungs. I shook off my stunned surprise to the sound of applause. We were surrounded by a ring of bystanders, mostly kids, wide-eyed and grinning. And I realized the woman's bra had slipped down around her waist. Marcy tugged it back into place as the EMT bus came rolling up the beach to us. 2 uniformed medics scrambled out and I rose and backed away, giving them room to work. Wading into the shallows, I knelt, splashing water up into my face to rinse away the dreck. Then I trudged back to the ambulance, leaning against it to catch my breath. Marcy came trotting up. She'd pulled on her own saffron sunsuit and had the woman's clothes in her arms.
"Found these on top of the dune," she said. "Didn't see a purse."
She placed them at the foot of the metal gurney, then put both hands on my shoulders, scanning my face.
"Ray, are you okay?"
I nodded. It was all I could manage. My bell was still ringing from the headbutt. I'm in fair shape for a 30-year-old attorney who spends most days behind a desk, muscle and bone and not much more, but I was definitely running on fumes now. I turned my face up to the noonday sun, content just to be alive and breathing. Marcy fetched my beach clothes, baggies and a t-shirt, and I pulled them on over my trunks. One of the EMTs tapped my arm, a guy I knew from Merchants League hockey. Kraniak? Krawcheck? Something like that.
"Mr. Beaumont? The woman's conscious, but she's not talking. Do you know her name?"
No.
"What about drugs? She has tats on her arms that mask her veins. Do you know if she's using?"
No clue, pal. I tasted booze on her lips, but that's it. I've never seen her before. I saw her wade into the surf and disappear, went after her. That's really all I can tell you.
"She's in her underwear. Was it a suicide attempt?"
No idea.
"Roger that. She's asking for you, though."
What?
"She's asking for the guy who saved her. That's you, right? We're going to transport her to Samaritan. It would help if you can get her name. We can call ahead for her records."
No good deed goes unpunished, I groaned, straightening up. I circled to the rear of the van. The woman was on a metal gurney now, pale as death, her lips bloodless. A good-looking woman, mid-30s, short dark hair, trim and fit. Pretty. "Hey," I said, kneeling beside her. "How are you doing?" Dumb question. Her gaze locked on mine a moment, as if memorizing my face. "Ma'am? Can you tell me your name?" She closed her eyes, perhaps the only answer she could manage, then gestured with her fingertips for me to come closer. I leaned in to hear better, and wham! She nailed me, slapped my face so hard that my head snapped halfway around.
"Okay, guess we'd better go,"
the EMT said quickly, suppressing a grin as he and his buddy loaded the woman hastily into the ambulance.
"Sorry about that, Mr. Beaumont."
"No good deed is right,"
Marcy cracked, also grinning, enjoying this way too much.
"Are you okay, Ray?"
"I'm just ducky," I mumbled, dabbing at the blood drooling down my chin. "And I'm definitely done with good deeds for today." But I was wrong about that. We were in my summer runabout, a '63 Corvette convertible headed back to Marcy's apartment, when my phone hummed. I frowned at the caller ID. Valhalla Police. Chief Marge Kazmarek. I switched on. This is Ray Beaumont.
Ray, it's Chief Kaz. I'm calling from Samaritan Hospital. The woman you saved, she's asking for you.
We've already talked, Chief. I've got a fat lip to prove it.
The medics told me what happened, but she seems more together now. I wouldn't ask if it weren't important. The medic says it could have been a suicide attempt. If a victim's a danger to herself, we can hold her for observation, but she's demanding to be released and wants a lawyer.
And you gave her my name? Thanks a lot, Marge. No comeback from Chief Kazmarek, and suddenly my alarm bells started going off. Come on, Chief, what is it you're not telling me?
Her name.
Chief Kazmarek sighed.
Her driver's license says she's Terry Prince, but she claims to be Mrs. Leo Stefano.
I blinked. The labor boss? I thought he was dead.
Missing, presumed dead as Jimmy Hoffa and almost as famous. Walked out of a Detroit bar last year, hasn't been seen since. The FBI, DEA, and organized crime units have been digging up baseball fields and barnyards all over the country looking for him. But that's Leo Sr. The lady claims she married Leo Jr. a few weeks ago in Mexico. You know young Leo, right?
Sort of. His family has a summer house on the shore. I used to hit parties there back in high school.
You and every other underage kid in Valhalla. And from what the lady says, Leo Jr. hasn't grown up much. In any case, I gave her your name and she's asking for you. If she's a potential suicide, I can't cut her loose. But she claims it was an accident, that she caught a bad wave, and she seems, well, rational. What's your take?
I really don't know, Marge. I didn't actually see what happened. I saw her walking out. When I looked again, she was gone. Sorry.
Then talk to her, Ray. Please. You two saved her, but I think she might still be in trouble, especially if she's Leo's latest wife.
Are you sure she is? I haven't heard anything about Leo getting married again.
Nor have I, but if I order a psych evaluation, she'll be in custody for 48 hours, and she's already threatening to sue.
You understand that if I talk to her, our conversation will be privileged, Marge. Lawyer-client. I can't be your snitch.
Just clear up the confusion. I'll owe you one.
On my way, I said, wheeling the vet around in a tight U-turn.
Where to?
Marcy asked. Samaritan Hospital. Our Vic wants a lawyer.
Terrific,
she grinned.
Think she'll smack you again?
Probably, I said. Samaritan Hospital is a Vale County showcase. 5 stories, a snow-white facade of sprayed concrete, a tiered entrance a la Frank Lloyd Wright. It was built to impress wealthy tourists and the nouveau riche newbies who've quadrupled the North Shore's population over the past decade. Internet money, mostly. If you can do business online, why not move your laptop to Valhalla? Summer beaches, hunting in the fall, skiing in winter, skydiving year-round if you're crazy enough. Leo Stefano's family moved up here from Detroit back in the 90s, one step ahead of an indictment for labor racketeering that faded after the old man disappeared. In the meantime, the family put down serious financial roots in Vale County. A bank, a hardboard plant, and a trucking firm, fully unionized, of course. International Brotherhood of Gangsters. And if my victim was really Leo Jr.'s wife, my day was about to get a lot more interesting. Valhalla PD Chief Kazmarek was waiting for me at the Samaritan admittance desk. Marge is a queen-size woman, wide as a semi, nearly 6 feet tall, gray hair tightly permed as a Brillo pad. She was in her tan summer uniform, no badge or name tag necessary. Everybody in Valhalla knows Chief Kaz. We rode the elevator up to the 3rd floor together. The detention wing? I noted. Do you think she's mental?
I don't know what she is, Ray. So far, all she's given us is a name, Terry Lee Stefano, which doesn't match her driver's license, which says Prince. We need to clear that up for openers. If she's a walk away from a funny farm, hooray for us, problem solved. But to run that down, I'll need to verify her name.
I'll do my best. Which was all I could promise. The only sure thing about head cases is that nothing's sure about head cases. The detention suite had a patrolman just outside the door and bars on the windows. It was a white room, acoustic tiled ceilings.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?